Welcome to Messy Liberation, the podcast that dives deep into feminism, business, and personal growth. I'm Becky Mollenkamp.
And I'm Taina Brown. Get ready for another messy conversation through the eyes of two intersectional feminist coaches.
Let's get messy. Hello, everyone. Hello, Taina.
Hi. How are
How
you?
Jinx. As my kid always likes to say, Jinx, buy me a Coke. I'm good. Is that a Jurassic Park sweatshirt?
Yes and no. So we went to Hawaii last year and we went to where they filmed part of Jurassic Park. And so it's a Jurassic Valley. Yeah. At the Kualoa Ranch.
I didn't even know they filmed some of that in Hawaii. So there you go.
Yeah.
Now that you say it, I can see it, but I didn't know it.
Yeah. Yeah. It was fun. It was fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
I've been sick. So I was going to say that up front, along with everything else. You know that expression, when it rains, it pours?
Yeah.
It really does feel that. And I wonder if it's because it's true or it's just because once you start to feel kind of because of one thing, you start to notice like the multiplies upon itself. Whether it's actually more or not, it just feels heavier with each new thing or something. And your attention is more focused on the things that are wrong. I don't have, it's a working theory. But anyway.
It could be both. It could be both.
It could be both, yeah. So, but anyway, I am here and I'm trying to function.
Yeah.
And what I have been doing, like yesterday, because I was really feeling poor, and this morning I'm feeling better, but on the mend. So I was trying to allow myself to relax. I was in my recliner again, but hey, I'm out of it now. So I'm making progress. But I sat in my recliner and I watched The Great British Sewing Bee, which is only available on BBC America, or on BBC.
Bee?
The Great British Sewing Bee.
Sewing.
Like they sew clothing. Yeah. And so it's kind of like the Great British Bake Off or the Great Pottery Throwdown, if you watch that one, which I also watch. But it's like that. Most Americans at least know the Great British Bake Off. And it's that same sort of, they're competing, but they all love and support each other. And it has that very like sweet, homey kind of a feeling, and everything's
very regulating.
Yes, it's paced slowly. The people are nice. I love their accents. They're making things with their hands. And anyway, I like this one because it's sewing and you get to watch them create garments. But unlike Project Runway, where it's all about they're designers and it's about the designs, this is really focused on the craft of sewing. So it is who's the best
British thing.
Right? Exactly. So it's, well, even like British Bake Off, it's often not who makes the most flashy thing. It's like, which it really has to taste great, not have a soggy bottom, all of these like technical things. And so this show is very technical. I mean, they examine the seams and did you hide the zipper well? And like, is it well constructed matters more than is it original and creative and beautiful, which I really appreciate because I think I think that's such a shift in the way Americans show up and in how British folks seem to show up.
Yeah.
So anyway, I've been watching that and it's making me want to sew.
Do you know how to sew?
No. I mean, I took home ec in 8th grade.
Yeah. I mean, everybody did.
Right? Well, no, I think all the girls did. At least in my day, it was like all the girls basically took home ec and all the boys basically took shop.
Woodworking.
Yeah. Hopefully some of that's changed by now. I don't know. But I did take that. I remember making like a pillow and like maybe a stuffed animal, maybe a shirt. I don't remember. But my mom is an excellent seamstress. And in fact, she in her retirement makes a pretty decent little side income to supplement her pension. Wow. Through sewing. She does alterations, but also she constructs entire garments. She's made and altered wedding gowns. A coach, she does upholstery work. Like she's very, very talented in sewing. And so I watch her doing it and she makes it, of course, look so easy. I watch this show. They make it look so easy. So I recently went out and purchased a whole bunch of stuff at Goodwill, like skirts and drapes and just like random pieces of fabric that were inexpensive or garments that I could use for the fabric. And my mom's going to teach me how to sew.
That's fun though, because that's something you guys can do together.
Yeah. And I'm hoping it's a skill I can then maybe expand upon. And she has an extra machine. So once I kind of learn, I can get a machine here. And like, I think as a woman who is in a larger body and can't always find clothing that I like off the shelf, and certainly not as easily at thrift stores, which is where I tend to shop for a host of reasons. One, it's less expensive, and two, it's less wasteful. It can be hard to find clothing that fits and you feel good in. And so the idea of potentially maybe being able to make custom things that actually fit my
Yeah.
body out of
Yeah.
fabrics that I love. Like that
Yeah.
also sounds exciting to me. But I'm going to
Yeah.
start with tote bags
Yeah. Yeah.
because that's
Or at
easier.
least, at the very least, like amend garments that you might find in the store. Because I feel like that's the big thing when you're like in a not quote unquote normal size body. It's like you can find something that you like, and in some places it fits, and in others it doesn't. And so it might have to be tailored. And so,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah, I'm excited about that. So that is my latest I haven't started, but just even the thought of a creative project gets me really excited more
Yeah.
than I actually think the thought of the creative project and like dreaming about the creative project and all of that in some ways is more exciting to me than the actual creative, like the project itself, like the
Yeah. It's the
doing of it.
anticipation.
Yeah, like there's more in the like the dreaming of what it will be like and what I might
Yeah.
create and all of that. In some ways feels more exciting than actually sitting down to do
To
the
do
thing
it.
because
Yeah.
I could have already done this. I've had weeks already that I could have gone over there and I haven't yet. So clearly I'm more excited about the thought and like the shopping of the fabrics
Yeah.
and the dreaming up. Like I've been searching for patterns online. Like all of that part of it gets me really
Yeah.
excited. Yeah. I don't know. How do you feel about creative? Like, do you have creative outlets or do you dream about creative outlets?
I do. I do. In my mind, I'm a really talented artist, but not in reality.
You know, it is that maybe why I don't want to start because in my mind right now, I am making the most incredible bags. When I sit down to do it, I'm not so sure it's going to happen. So is it better like where we just imagine ourselves being this
Yeah.
talented and don't actually have to put our like money where our mouths are?
Yeah. So in your mind, you're a handbag designer. Is that what you're
Oh my
saying?
God, I've made the most elaborate, beautiful, like in my head, I can picture these most amazing bags. If I sit down to actually sketch them out or try to figure it out, like I got the fabrics now and then I look at it and I think, I don't know what to do here. Like, I don't even know where to
How does
start. But
this come together?
but in my mind, I'm like, of course I'll make the most amazing bags.
Yeah. 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 No, I gave up on the art dream a long time ago when I tried, I took a watercolor class, not a class, but like a little like workshop once. And it wasn't too bad, but I don't have the patience to like pick up like art or an instrument or something like that. Because I also love music, and I'm like, at one point I was like, maybe I'll learn how to play the guitar or play the bass, and I just don't have the patience to do something that I'm not almost immediately good at.
Samesies. And my son is like that. And it's frustrating. It's part of the reason I also want to do this because I watch my son show up exactly how I have in life, which is if I can't figure it out and be amazing right away, then what's the point? Which I know is rooted in white supremacy. And like, I don't want to show up that way. And yet I think it's so ingrained in so many of us. I played in fifth grade trumpet, sixth grade flute. Wait, piano was before that. So I played piano in like second and third grade. I played trumpet in fourth grade. I played flute in sixth grade. I played guitar briefly in like seventh, eighth grade. Then again, as an adult, I tried to start piano again and took piano lessons as an adult. Quit that, took guitar lessons again as an adult. Quit that, and now I've bought a weighted piano keyboard again to start and have started and stopped learning twice already.
That's hilarious.
Because I start and then I'm not great, and then it's just like I
And
don't.
then you
It's
don't
so
want to do it anymore.
which is
Yeah.
probably the same thing with the sewing. Where like in my
Yeah.
head right now, I'm amazing at it, and as soon as I start, I won't be because you can't be when you first start something.
Yeah, because you don't know it. You
Which is
don't
what I
know
tell my
it.
son all the time. I'm like,
Yeah.
practice is what makes progress. You
Yeah.
have to. But I also can't, like, there's hard because I sort of get where my kid's coming from because I'm like,
It's ego death.
yeah, how do you deal with that? Because I do want a creative outlet. And
Yeah.
yet I struggle to actually give myself one because it's so hard. I said on here before I was going to take up rock painting, right? Because my mind was
Oh,
like,
that's
oh,
great.
I'll never sell my rocks. That's not a big deal. And I have made
And it
rocks.
doesn't even have to be good. It's fucking rocks.
Well, in my head, that was it. But then I sit down and do it. And every time I'm like, these suck. This isn't good. I could have done better. And instead, this thing that, like, before I start, I think this is going to be amazing. These are going to
Yeah.
look so good. I can't wait. Like, oh, this is going to be
Yeah.
wonderful. Then I get done and I think, what a piece of shit. You suck. Why
Yeah.
bother? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I hate that. I don't know how to stop it.
Yeah. I think we have to rethink what outcome we're looking for, right? Like we're not like if we're looking to excel at something, then that something should be something that you pick up. That I'm saying something a lot, but just bear with me here. If you're looking to excel at a specific, then that skill should be something that is so values aligned that the effort makes it worth it. If it's just for the sake of having something creative to do, then I think at that point, we have to redefine what success looks like, right? Like it has to be, I'm not doing this to have good art, I'm doing this to be artistic.
To create,
To create, yeah. So it
whether
has
it's
to be about the process, not about the output, you know? And I think that's one way to kind of suffer through that ego death without it becoming a roadblock to that creative outlet. And so like with, because I took a piano class in college. I played saxophone in like fourth grade. I never practiced.
and then we wonder why we don't turn into
Right.
virtuosos.
So like there are a lot of things where I'm like, ooh, that looks like fun. And then I try it and I'm just like, I don't really want to do it. It's harder than I thought it was going to be and it's not worth it to me. But a couple things that have been worth it to me because it's like really values aligned for me is making my own bread and gardening.
What does that mean? We're like, what is it about the values alignment in those things? Just, I'm curious, like
Yeah.
versus maybe creating fine art.
Yeah. I think when it comes to like gardening and bread making and even like floral arranging, so like these flowers back here on this bookcase, like Mello got those for me over the weekend and they were already arranged, but I rearranged them in a vase because I like doing that. I'm an amateur florist. But what makes it values aligned for me is like when it comes to gardening and like flower arranging, those are things that are like beautiful to me, and beauty is one of my top core values, right? So participating or engaging and creating something that is beautiful in and of itself, regardless of how I rearrange it. Like those
So that's
flowers
the
are gonna look
difference,
pretty, regardless
right?
of how I put them together.
So that's the difference in you creating fine art. That's starting with a blank slate that isn't pretty on its
Right.
own. It's up to
Right.
you to make it pretty. With
Yeah.
gardening, floral
Yeah.
arranging, those things are pretty. You're just making them prettier.
Yeah. Yeah. And then with bread making and like cooking and baking and things like that, like I consider those creative outlets as well.
For sure.
Baking, I think, and bread making is like very technical. Like you have
But
to
you're
be
creating
really
something.
precise, but you're creating something.
You're
Yeah.
making bread out of not
Yeah.
bread.
Yeah. And for me, that is just how I like feeding people is how I really show, like it's a love language for me. Like that's how I grew up. My grandmother was like always trying to feed people. Like I grew up helping her in the kitchen. And so I love hosting. I love, making meals for people and doing dinner parties or brunches or, having people out to like grill on a nice day. So like those things, the effort for that makes it worth it for me. So whereas like Mello, my wife, like she loves food the same, like she's a foodie just like me, but like she hates the process of cooking, right? Because that's not something that is necessarily completely values aligned for her. Like she'll do it if she needs to, but she hates following a recipe. She hates like the prep work, like the chopping of the vegetables and onions and stuff, the cleaning up, like all of that. I mean, I hate the cleaning up too. Like that's
Who doesn't?
yeah, but yeah, those are creative outlets, and I think one thing that I have been thinking lately is like I want to learn a new language this year.
Mm.
Like I feel like I
So
haven't.
hard as an
It
adult.
is, it is. I feel like I haven't really learned anything. Like I've learned things for like my coaching practice and facilitation work, but I feel like I haven't like learned something that feels academic, if that makes sense, or that feels like sitting in a classroom
Feels
in a
more
long time.
intellectual, for lack of a better
Yeah,
word,
yeah,
but
it
like
feels more
brain
tangible.
based instead
Yeah,
of hand based.
yeah, yeah. So that's something I've been thinking about, and I'm just like, should I like sign up for classes at the community college? Should I like see if there's like a local person that teaches classes like on the weekends or whatever? And so, but
Well, because you
I'm
could
like,
use Babbel or Duolingo or one of those and do it alone, but that won't
I
work.
tried,
Yeah.
and after like a few weeks, I just forget about it. So like, I need the structure of like of a class or a workshop. And so, but then there's also the side of me that's like, okay, but if I start this, am I gonna like quit, or am I gonna give up a few weeks in because I'm gonna lose interest?
This is like the practical part of our brains, I feel like, because that's part of what holds me back too. Like, I'll have these ideas about creative expression. And one, I hear my dad's voice from when I was a kid with guitar saying, like, I think I had asked them to either buy me a guitar or give me his guitar or something. And I remember, like, I'm not going to do that because you just quit everything. Right. And like, you know how parents, like, they, even when it was, I mean, it was true. I did start and stop a lot of things. So it's not like it was hurtful, like intentionally hurtful or anything like
Yeah.
that. But I remember taking that in as an like a this is true about me statement. Like I am a quitter, right? Rather than it being I have quit things, it
Yeah.
was like I am a quitter,
That's an
right? And that's that
identity.
shamey kind of part of it. And
Yeah.
now I can still feel that whenever I endeavor on something where it's like
Yeah.
now my practical grown-up brain is like, well, you're probably not going to stick with it anyway. It's going to cost blah 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 to start, and is it
Yeah.
worth the investment? And you only have so much time, and maybe the time you have free time you have should be spent on making more money or whatever. Like all of those sorts of thoughts, I think for
Yeah.
a lot of adults keep us from giving ourselves that freedom to like play and
Yeah.
express that we
Yeah.
need, but we lose as we get older.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I was just I just recorded an episode on Kim Romaine's podcast.
Yeah. And it's empowered and embodied show for anybody
Yeah,
who's
yeah.
curious.
It'll come out in like later this summer, but we talked about that, about like the power of play. And I think, as an adult, you do have to balance the rationality of like where you spend your energy and your money, because those are real things, because we have a lot of commitments. We live in an attention economy. And so we have to be strategic about
And
what we do with those things.
they're more real real depending on your privilege too, obviously,
Right,
right? Yeah.
right, right. But at the same time, I think we venture too far into that and we lose the experimental side of living.
Yeah.
And so like I think as a child, it's okay for children to start something and stop it because they're learning about their interest, right?
Right.
And when we become adults, we stop doing that. We stop learning about what interests us and what excites us. And we assume that what we're doing every day are the things that interest us and excite us. Or we just don't don't prioritize it anymore.
Or like we think of these things as like almost like finite, like you reach a certain place and by then you're supposed to know all the
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
And then those are the things you do forever. And it's like, why start something new? Because, and especially if it's something you've already done, like in the case of
Yeah.
playing piano or maybe trying to learn a language before and stopping. It's like, well, you already tried that. You didn't like it. Well, that me didn't like it. But 9-year-old me or even 29-year-old me isn't me now.
Right.
And why we can't give ourselves permission to say, I'm a different me and maybe now I will
Yeah.
like it. And maybe I won't. And can that be okay? Because
Yeah.
like with my child, he's 9. I'm like, I want him to try everything.
Yeah.
We're like, try this sport, try that sport, try this activity, try like I'm excited when he wants to try something new. And in fact, I get more worried when he says he doesn't want to try something he hasn't tried before. Because like
Yeah.
you don't know if you'll like it unless you've tried it. And
Yeah.
I encourage that. And when he quits, I don't see it as a sign of like quitting. I mean, we always make him finish his responsibilities or
Yeah.
obligations,
Yeah.
commitments. Like if he committed to a season on a team, then he's going to
Then you're
finish
gonna
out that
finish out
season.
the season. Yeah.
But if he says, I don't want to play that sport again next season, I don't think, oh, you're a failure. Oh, you're a quitter. I think,
Yeah.
okay, you've learned that that's not the thing you want and you want to try this other thing or you want to invest
Yeah.
more time in these things. And somewhere along the way,
We lose
we,
that.
yeah, we lose it for ourselves. And that's really sad because why? What is it that we think has changed that
Yeah.
now suddenly anything we do, we attempt and don't stick with indicates failure in some way?
Yeah.
And I say this as somebody who does this to myself, right? So this is not the proverbial we or them, it's me. Like I
It's
don't know
literally
what
us. Yeah.
yeah, it's so interesting and it's so easy to say redefine success and I work with clients on that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really hard. It's
It
really
is
hard to
hard.
do to get rid of that like brainwashing that says you
Yeah.
have to be perfect at something, you have to get it right away, you have to be the best. When you sit down to do something new as an adult where you think, well, if I had started this when I was 9, I'd be amazing at it by now. Or like,
Mm-hmm.
why bother?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'll never be able to do it as well as all these other people who've been doing it for 30
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
learning how to enjoy the process is hard for me.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. Me too. Because I want it to just be good right off the bat.
Yeah. And
And
focusing
I
on the end
think
result.
right, because productivity, right? Because of things like productivity and like our worth and our identity being tied to how well we can do things and how
Yeah.
efficiently we can do things and how
And
much we can do things.
how do others value those things? Could we
Yeah,
sell the thing? Like I talk with
yeah,
clients all the time too who are creatives and find themselves stifled in their creativity because it gets to this place as adults where it's almost like if I can't sell the thing, if I can't make money off the thing, then does that thing have any value to it,
yeah,
right? And learning
yeah.
how to the process is the value or that expression is the value. But that's hard in capitalism.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It is. I've had people tell me, "Oh, have you ever thought about opening a restaurant or a bakery?" And I'm like, that I'm not gonna lie, I have thought about it, but I don't want to because then it's not a creative outlet for me anymore. Now it's tied to this monetary value, and that's a recipe for disaster for me. No pun intended. But yeah, no, and I think that ability to just be experimental and like curious about different things, like when you lose that, like I think that is part of this whole like epidemic of like people being shut off to like just new ideas about how to just live life. When you see people like digging in their heels about what it means to be a human, what it means to be a woman, or what it means to be a man, it's like it's because you haven't fucking learned anything. You're not curious about someone else's experience anymore. You're just set in your own ways. And I think when we say things like everything is connected, like this is one of the ways that that shows up where everything is connected. It's because without that curiosity, without that sense of just like experimentation, it's just such a small-minded way, like and like you said, this is hard for us. Like this is something that obviously we're talking about it because we're both experiencing it, right? And so I think everyone experiences this on some level or another. And I don't want to say I want to get to the point because I don't think there is a point. I think this is because we're constantly pushing up against the boundaries of toxic productivity and toxic capitalism. It's a constant struggle. It's going to be a constant struggle to resist that and instead operate from a place of curiosity and experimentation. Like that's never going to go away. And I think realizing that helps us to have grace for ourselves too, whenever we're like feeling like shit because we don't want to suffer that ego death, right?
hmm Well, and I also think there's this separate from all of those things, which are all true and wound up and why I haven't started sewing yet, or, why I'm not painting my rocks as much as I could, is I think there's this thing that we do often, especially I think those with more marginalized identities, because we have often more financial pressures placed on us, where it is this delayed gratification of like,
Mm-hmm.
I'll do that when, like, we have to earn our creative
Yeah.
expression in the same way we have to earn our rest or earn our pleasure. It's like I have to earn the time to do that thing. And it's like, oh, well, once I'm making X amount of money, then I'll have more time to do those things or,
Yeah.
whatever the thing looks like for people. Because I find that with myself where I'm like, it feels like this is a use of time. And it's like, have I really earned that time? Right.
Yeah.
When there's bills that need to be paid, this guilt of like, I need to be spending the time trying to figure out how to pay those bills when in fact, like I'm watching the British sewing bee. That's time I could because I'm not feeling well or because like the weight of that pressure gets to me and I feel sort of stagnant. And it's like
Mm-hmm.
I actually think that the creative outlet is the kind of thing that can then fuel you to see new opportunities inside your work, think of
Yeah.
different ways
Yeah.
to make money, not
Yeah.
necessarily through the sewing, but just that creative energy. It brings energy
Yeah.
back into you to want to work. And it's like, I need to stop doing that delayed, like earning my rewards
Yeah.
thing and saying, no, I'm allowed to and need to
Yeah.
create that time for this activity, not just when XYZ
Yeah,
happens.
yeah, yeah. And there's neuroscience to back that up, right? Like when you're learning something new, you're creating new neural pathways in your brain, which then makes it easier for you to see possibility and innovate, and also makes it easier for you to learn in the future, right? Like it's like this snowball kind of effect or this like domino effect. And so I think, there's you can't innovate, you can't think outside of the box. Like as a business owner, right? I'm talking right now, like you can't really like set yourself apart as a business owner unless you have time for creativity, for that that just kind of experimental phase of just like whether it's focus on your business or just hobbies, right? Just giving yourself the time to just do something for the sake of doing it, not for the sake of any kind of output.
Yeah. I'm thinking that one of the things that helps me, just like you said, taking a class can help you because there's some structure and this like sort of external expectations of accountability. Like you're going to show up to the class and whatever,
Yeah.
they'll check you in, like that piece can help you do it. And I'm thinking like, I think one of the things that helps me is not doing things alone because when it's just me, and it's similar to what you're talking about, but like when it's just me doing it, it's easy for me to let it go. But like and my mom doesn't count because it's also easy to tell her no. But
Yeah.
if it was like part of a friend's, like a social outing and people were expecting me to show up and, and then it's also like fun and not just about the result of the thing I create, but more about like the
The
experience
connection. Yeah. Yeah.
that I think that would help. So I'm like, I should look and see if there's like sewing circles or something. I'm
Yeah.
sure there are. Maybe not people my age, but you
Yeah.
never know. I shouldn't presume that. And also, I'm
Yeah.
not that young anymore anyway.
But even if it's not people your age, it could still be a pleasant
Right. That
experience.
reminder that there's value and
Yeah.
wisdom in
Yeah.
at all ages. As I'm
Yeah.
sitting here reading a piece about the double standard of aging by Susan
Yeah.
Sontag from the Assigned Reading podcast, I'm very much thinking about aging right now.
Yeah.
And yeah, like the way we discount that wisdom that those my older friends can bring
Yeah.
too, and not just young friends. But anyway, that's what I'm thinking. Maybe I need to find a way to have the creativity connected to, like you were saying, your values. For me, community is such a big value that
Hmm.
maybe, and honestly, even if it was virtual, even if there's just a group of
Yeah.
us that I find who want to sew, but we're doing it on Zoom and there's a little bit of discussion, or, like when you fuck up, you say, ah, shit, I just fucked up that seam, or, hey, do you guys know how to fix a zipper or whatever?
Yeah.
You have somebody there, but it also makes it fun. So I think that might help me. You want to sign up for a class. That's a good way to
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna do French because I
Ooh la
started
la.
French actually in college. I took one semester and I actually did really well, but I was going to school full time and working full time. And after that one semester, I was like, I just don't have the capacity to study for this the way that I need to in order to get a decent grade. So then I switched over to Spanish because I figured that would be easier. It actually wasn't.
They're
Uh,
pretty much on par. I mean, they're all
yeah.
Romance languages. They're very similar. So
Yeah. I
yeah, it's not
mean,
that one's necessarily easier or not.
yeah, it wasn't easier, not necessarily because I was learning Spanish, because I grew up with native Spanish speakers, but it was because when you grow up in a native Spanish speaking environment, that's very different from learning it in an academic setting
I'm
because there
sure.
are a lot of technicalities and rules. So, I mean, it was because I was learning Spanish. I was learning it in a different way. And
Well, that's
that,
like saying you're going to learn English from someone who's, Southern. And I say this as
yeah,
somebody with Southern family because the Southern sort of American English is far more, I say lazy, but I don't mean that in a way that Southerns are lazy. Just like it's slower.
it's
There's
slower.
a lot
Yeah.
of like words that sort of turn into different words and
Yeah.
there's just different
There's a
pacing.
lot
It's
of
just a
different dialects in the
yeah, and
South.
there's nothing wrong with it. It's just
Yeah.
not the type of English you wouldn't get an A in an English class if you're using like Southern dialect.
Yeah. Yeah. So I feel like in a way the Spanish was harder because then it was like going against
You're almost
what
having
I
to
already
unlearn.
knew.
You're unlearning and relearning, which
Yeah.
is harder
Yeah.
than just
Yeah.
learning the way
Yeah.
they want you to learn.
Yeah. So yeah, because I ended up, I think I got an A in French and I ended up with like I did 2 semesters of Spanish and I got like a B minus and a C.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I took AP French. Like I took 3 years of French in high school, including AP French, and got college credit. And I remember exactly un peu a little, like almost like I know I can say "Où est la toilette?" Where's the toilet?
yeah.
Je m'appelle Becky. Like I can say a
Yeah.
few things, but not enough to survive. And
Yeah.
I certainly can't understand it. And I have thought about taking French too. And I've also taken sign language, a semester of sign language as an
Mm,
adult at a continuing ed. And I loved that. And my kid talked about doing that with me. So that would be something that would be cool.
fun. That'd be fun
Mhm.
to do with G-Man. With G-Man. Yeah,
And all I
Mel wants
remember with
to
sign
do it.
language is my alphabet. And even there, I think I've got like 3 letters I can't quite remember. I'm like that Jane of all trades, master of none, where I've done a little of everything. And I think there's also
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that, right? Like
There isn't.
some of it is it's instead of looking at it as failures, it's like it's dabbling.
Yeah.
It's scratching an itch, getting curiosity met, and do we have to be the best at everything or even
No,
good at
no.
everything, right? Like you don't have to master a skill or even be great at a skill. If
Yeah.
it's just enough for you, like for me, I learned the sign language alphabet. I can still use that if I really had to. I would love to learn more, and maybe at some point I
Mhm.
will, but I also don't see it as a failure. It was an interesting, I did it at the time with my ex-husband. It was an opportunity for us to spend time together. It was an opportunity
Mhm.
for me to meet new people. I felt like I was doing something really
Yeah.
interesting. Like, how is that a waste of time? It's the same way
Yeah.
that we look at divorce as a failure often. And it's like,
Yeah.
maybe it was a
No.
successful marriage that just came to its end. And can you not
Yeah.
just say, I appreciate the decade or however much time it was, in my
Yeah.
case, a
Yeah.
decade of marriage? Can I just say that, like, there was a decade in there that was not bad. And can I
Yeah.
say that
Yeah.
that's okay and that it ended? The same way we don't like beat up a book for, in fact, I think if a
Ending.
book went
Yeah.
on forever and ever,
Yeah.
you would hate it. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think it can be the same thing with creativity and learning. And
Yeah.
can it not just be for that moment and appreciate it for what it was in that moment instead of feeling like it has to be like I'm doing it so that I now can speak French fluently? What
Yeah.
if you never speak French fluently, but
Yeah.
you have an interesting time learning some and
Yeah.
meeting
Yeah.
people?
Meeting people. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. We've been to Paris a couple times, and I'm just gonna brag because even with just the one semester of French, I feel like I still retained enough to like get around. And um, there were several times where French people were complimenting me on my accent and thought I was French because
Very
of
good.
how I was talking. And I was
Très
like,
bien.
that never happens to Americans.
Well, and it's also enough for you to probably for another value to be able to show that you care enough about others' cultures to
Yeah.
try. And
Yeah.
that's often enough for people to appreciate it too. So even if
Yeah.
you don't like that, and that can be what it can be. Like, I just want to take enough of a language that if I go to a country that speaks that language, I can at least show that I cared enough to try,
Yeah.
that
That
I'm
you
making the
respect the
attempt.
culture. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
No one's going to be, well, I shouldn't say no one, but I doubt there's anyone who's fluent in every language in the world. Like, that's pretty
That would
hefty.
be hard.
It'd be very hard. And so it's not that you have to do it. Like it can just be, I'm interested in whatever the thing is. Like if I sew and I only ever learn how to make a tote bag, which is a very real possibility. Okay.
That's
Could
not,
that not be
yeah.
enough? Like
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
make a kick-ass tote bag. Don't ask me to make a dress, but I can make, and like, can I be okay with that? Do I have to be
Mhm.
able to be the best at everything?
Yeah.
The answer right now feels like yes, but I really want to keep, pushing
Yeah.
myself to say,
Yeah.
no. So I'm
Yeah.
saying this like it sounds like I'm preaching to everyone else, but I'm preaching to me.
Preaching to myself. Yeah. We're
For
preaching to
sure.
ourselves here for sure. For sure. I was like that when I started sourdough during the pandemic, during lockdown. And I was like trying to perfect it, trying to perfect it, trying to perfect it. And I could never get the dough right before baking. I could never get it like tight enough to like score it properly so that it looks like it would look like in a bakery. And after a few tries, I was like, fuck it. It tastes good. It looks good. It bakes fine. Whatever. It doesn't matter what it looks like. Like, it doesn't matter if it's like tight enough or whatever. Like, it'll be okay
And it
because
also
that's my point.
it also scratched an itch during pandemic or during lockdown time of like, I need something else to put my
Yeah.
attention to. I
Yeah.
need something that I feel like I'm creating something. And like, even if it didn't taste okay, like the
Yeah.
fact that had a place to put your attention, that you had something to do with your hands, something that gave
Yeah.
you an activity besides just staring at Netflix, like all of those things are
Yeah.
also like valuable.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to paint
I
a rock
think,
today.
I think some of these practices or like creative outlets, we can also look at them as like somatic experiences, right? Like we
Exactly.
spend so much time in our heads that we forget to be in our bodies. And I say this as someone, I was literally thinking about this a couple days ago. I say this as someone with a chronic illness who I don't like being in my body because I don't trust my body. I never know how it's going to feel. I never know how it's going to treat me. So doing something that is very somatic feels unsafe to me most of the time. And so I have to get through that mindset block. But it's important to do somatic things, to have experiences where you are in your body, whether it's gardening or making bread or learning how to sew, right? Like those are things where you're using your body in a new way to help you get out of your head and have a somatic experience. So that way you can like really feel how you're feeling in that moment and help you be present. And I think we lose a lot of that when we deprioritize creative outlets, whether it's guitar or bread making or floristry or whatever the case may be.
Well, yeah, the piece about presence I think is so important. I think that's what it is about creativity is it is out of your head. You have to be focused. If you're not paying attention to the stitches, you could totally
Yeah.
mess it up, get your finger. Same thing with any of these projects, right? Like if you're not present in the moment of the thing you're doing with your hands or whatever part of your body
Yeah.
you're using, it can mess up. And so it's
Yeah.
forcing us to get out of our heads and do that. And the part you just said about not trusting your body, I just want to point out, and I fully understand that where you're coming from. And I think for people who live with disabilities or with chronic illnesses or, neurodivergence, whatever it is, there's often that, like, obviously this place where we start to distrust our bodies, right? But
Hmm.
I also think that's just true for most people. And I think
Yeah.
especially folks who are women or women identified, because we are made to not trust our bodies
Yeah.
at an early age. Not only are our bodies often the source of a lot of trauma from very young
Hmm.
ages, both
Hmm.
physical and other types of trauma, just even verbal trauma, that we are turned into objects. We are
Yeah.
made to not trust ourselves, people gaslighting us about our own embodied experiences. Like this is just such a common thing for people, and especially I think women identified people, that we start to not only not trust our bodies, but often even resent our bodies. They
Hmm.
become this source of resentment. I know I have felt that. Like when I first started to try and get embodied at nearly 40, I was like, I don't know. Like I lived
How?
so in my
Yeah.
head. I didn't like my body. I was angry with my body. I resented my body because I had been made to really feel that way about my
Hmm.
body on so many levels. And I think you're right that we need places that allow us this more gentle, hopefully loving, hopefully way of experiencing our bodies in new ways that are not just about our bodies as objects, not just about our bodies as sources of shame and all of that, but
Or
instead like,
sources of productivity.
right. But like our body is this beautiful thing that can help us do something, that can help us like get into a feeling that we want, that can help us be present. Like
Yeah.
those are like our body is the source of such beauty, but we've been made to feel so poorly about our bodies.
Yeah.
I agree. Like I think a lot of times that's what what creativity is most needs to be about. And then when we make it about the final product, we're again, I'm going back to me because I keep acting like I'm so superior here because I'm not. When I make it about the final product, I'm and sort of the process being this like thing I just have to get through, I'm sort of missing the point.
Yeah. 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 And we can't experience like true liberation until we have those embodied experiences. Like it's not about not being in your head. It's about like having an equilibrium between when it's time to be in your head and when it's time to be in your body, right? By being so attuned to yourself as a whole person. But you can't do that unless you have embodied experiences. And the like if you're not used to that, it feels really uncomfortable. Like I
For
remember the first
sure.
time I sat down with like a somatic therapist and I was just like, this is weird. I'm uncomfortable. I don't like this, right? And I didn't stick with that therapist for a long time, but I stuck with it for like a specific period of time because I was like, I need to practice. Like I need to like practice moving past that mental block that I had. And so sitting down with her and like doing all these like embodied exercises and stuff was just like, it was so uncomfortable. But at the end of that experience, I felt like the resistance to have those embodied experiences was like slowly wearing down. And I started to become a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more comfortable. And so we live in bodies, like we fucking live in bodies. Like you can't just get free in your head. Like your body has to be free as well. And you can't do
Yeah.
that without embodiment, without some kind of somatic experience.
Right. I think somatics and creativity is a part of that is a reclamation of the body.
Hmm.
A
Yeah.
reclamation of saying this body is mine and I am not going to resent it, but I'm going to love it. And that's really beautiful and important, right? And it's hard to find ways to do that. I think, like you said, there's other somatic experiences, but I do think creative expression is certainly one of those ways that we can reclaim the body. And that is an act of liberation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Before, because I not to switch topics because I actually think this is aligned, but as we talk about creativity, I know
Yeah.
that so much of what we said is about the ways that capitalism has perverted our experience with creativity, and I think both of these things can be true, and I do find a lot of creative outlet inside of my work. I'm lucky and
Yeah.
privileged in the way that I'm able to do that. Not everyone can, I know that, but I do find like podcasting, and now I'm doing 3 of them, feels super creative for me and I love it. Creating graphics in Canva, like, it's a silly thing, but it feels super creative to me. Like there are things that I get to do inside of my work that do scratch some of that itch for me.
Yeah.
And even in ways sometimes that are detached from money, like we're not making money on this podcast. I'm not
Yeah.
making money on assigned reading. Like it's really about that creative expression. Now it's a
Mm-hmm.
more, again, brain-based, head-based sort of creative expression, but still it's giving me some of that. And so
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
I do think we have to be careful about our creativity becoming too wrapped up into toxic capitalism. And I do think it's also valuable when you can to find creative expression inside your work.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Again, it's not a either or, right?
Right.
It's a both and.
It's that
Like it's a both
equilibrium.
and. Yeah, it's that equilibrium. And so um it's we're not going from one extreme to another. It's about, figuring out how these things can work together for you, right? And that's going to look different for everybody. Like the way that you find that equilibrium is going to be different from the way that I find the equilibrium because our needs are different. And so I'm really happy with where this conversation went.
Yeah. Well, because the other thing I wanted to mention is this podcast, while it wasn't I really felt like we started this strictly as I just think it would be fun.
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
want to do it? I love having conversations with you. Let's turn them into a podcast because that would be a fun way of doing this. And sort of that piece of if we're expecting each other to show up every week to record,
Yeah.
then we know we're
Yeah.
going to do it, right? So there was that accountability baked in by turning it into a podcast because it wasn't about money. It wasn't about monetization.
No.
For the most part, we've avoided a lot of the productivity pressures of like, oh, we got to
Yeah.
have a show out. I mean, we have been able to consistently get shows out every week, but there's been a few times where we banked some so we could, and
Yeah.
there's been times where we've moved around our schedule to do it. But also, I
Yeah.
think both of us know, like, if we miss a week, it's not going to be a big
Yeah.
deal, right?
Yeah.
But out of this, because we allowed for this space of creative expression, I do think that part we talked about, like creative expression then allows you to see new opportunities and look at
Mm.
things in a different way. We've recently started this coaches circle, which is
Yeah.
sort of a melding of different things. It was
Yeah.
something that I had started originally as sort of more for the community, less about creativity, but more just like I scratched that community itch that I always have. And then through doing this podcast and our work together, it was like, well, could that sort of come under this umbrella now? And I think it's because, because we allowed ourselves this space to do this and then that starts to prompt like, because originally we weren't even thinking about putting it under the messy liberation umbrella. It was just going to be its own thing.
Its own thing.
Yeah, and that's just like I think that invitation to see a bigger picture, to think of
Yeah.
things more broadly, to get a little more creative about how things show up. That is, has led to that. So like I think that this coaches circle we're doing feels a little bit aligned with this idea of creativity and where it can let you end up
Yeah.
if you allow yourself to just say, let's just explore it and see without it having to be a certain thing. Because we didn't start this thinking, we'll do this podcast and then we'll have
And then we'll do a coaches circle and then
No,
we'll
there's
do
not
this. And then, yeah.
right.
Yeah. It's just
It's
kind
just like
of
we want to do it because it was
emerged.
fun. And then it led to this. So I think that is a good example of what it can look like.
Yeah. Yeah. And even within the coaches circle, like we're trying to be super creative about how that functions, right? So we're constantly throwing ideas back and forth, getting feedback from the members that are already in there about what they want to see and what they want to experience. And I'm excited because I feel like this is right now it's really small and that
And we
allows
said
us
we give
to,
updates and we have 7 members and
we have
then
7
us. So
members
there's 9 of
and
us
then
all
us.
together,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
not far off from like we had kind of put a hope of 10 or so
Yeah.
to get us through the summer of this beta testing. Fell a little short of that, but honestly, I feel pretty good about where
Yeah.
we're at for just a starting place without a ton of promotion or anything.
Yeah. Yeah. I do too. I do too. And I think I was just talking to Nicole about this yesterday, actually during co-working for the coaches circle. Nicole is one of our members in the coaches circle.
Kind of cool.
Shout out to Nicole.
I think she's also one of our listeners. So
She is
yay.
also one of our listeners. Yeah. And she's great. I love being in community with her. But we were just talking about how like this principle of like, if you're going to start something, start small, right? Because that gives you the space to experiment and to co-create and to try different things. And that doesn't mean that it can't grow or can't get bigger, but like start small so you can like really hone in on like what the experience should feel like and what people should get out of it. So that way, so you can tap into that creativity. It's harder to experiment when something is huge, right? And
Yeah,
so
because
there are obviously ways to do it, right? From like a
yeah,
business operational standpoint, there are obviously ways to do that, but
but it's less
it's
creative.
easier. It's less
It's
creative.
less
And it takes
malleable.
more, yes, it takes more effort to be
Right.
creative
But
on
it
the
goes
big
against so
scale.
much of that conditioning we have of needing things to be perfect, all
Yeah.
figured out, because we see
Yeah.
this all the time. I know you with both of our clients where
Yeah.
people are, they don't take action. They get sort of stagnant or immobilized because of that. Like, I don't have it all figured out. I don't want to launch it imperfectly. I don't want people to
Yeah.
see this like in process piece.
Yeah.
What if it doesn't look as good? The branding's not perfect. All these things stop people from taking action. And the amount of time they waste, not waste, but the amount of time they spend in that cycle, often if they had just started by the time they actually launched, they would have been in the same place anyway, but they would have
Yeah.
been taking that to action that whole time instead of worrying.
Yeah.
And that is a very different place to be. The other thing we didn't talk about though, and I think is important based on what you were saying too about how we're doing the circle, is co-creation. Because so
Mm-hmm.
much of what we've talked about here is creativity is like a singular expression, an
Yeah.
individual experience, other than maybe doing it with a community. But there's also something so powerful about co-creation of like, what would it look like if I sewed a part of a tote, mailed it to you, and then you added your own fabrics and then you did
Mm-hmm.
something with it, right? Like that can be what an exciting way to, I also think, to then minimize the pressure you put on yourself because it's not
Yeah.
just you. And so we're
Yeah.
doing that inside of the circle. And we do that a lot, I think, in our businesses of like, what does this look like for me to say, I'm going to invite other collaborators in,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
co-conspirators to say, let's create this together. So it's not just my idea and it's not just all on me.
Yeah.
And I'm that like honestly, my head just now is going to like, what could that look like with some of the things I'm talking about for
Yeah.
creative expression? Because I
Yeah.
do think it changes your relationship with the experience when it's not
Yeah.
just you.
Yeah. Yeah. And even as a coach, like when I working with a new client, like we co-create that experience,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like it's not just, oh, I have this process and you're going to go through this
Right.
process and I'm going to
Yeah.
coach you through the process. It's like, what what do you want? Like, this is my process. How do we amend it to something that feels good to you, right? And then that creates like a really holistic experience for the client. So that way they feel like they're getting what they need out of the experience. I wanted to say, because like you mentioned, that thing that's saying like jack of all trades, master of none.
I said
And
Jane, but yeah.
Jane, person of all trades, master of none.
What is a gender non-specific name that we could use? But yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say X, but then that made me think of Elon. So
Yeah.
never.
Ooh. He's
But
ruined it.
yeah, sorry. But there's actually a second part to that quote that no one ever or hardly
Mm.
anyone ever says, and I forgot how it goes. But basically, it's the idea is like even if you're
Here it is. But oftentimes better than a master of one. Ooh, that's
there it
really
is.
good.
Yeah, it's like it's better to just dabble in and like know a bunch of different things than to just be an expert at like one thing. And so sometimes that's okay, but most times,
I'm so glad you just told me that, Taina, because I didn't know. How many times have I said it? And it also just feels like, oh, what a way that like toxic capitalism stuff has bastardized
yeah,
that saying to
yeah,
make it that shameful thing of like,
yeah,
oh, it's horrible to be a jack of all trades and a master of none. Like you should want
yeah,
to be a master of something. But the
yeah,
oftentimes better than a master of one is absolutely true. Like being skilled in many areas does just because you're not a specialist doesn't mean that you aren't like there's such beauty in that. It makes you
yeah,
versatile. It makes
yeah,
you, somebody that many people can turn to for help. And just because you can't help them with every facet, I think it's kind of like coaching in some ways,
yeah,
right? Where
yeah,
it's just about like being a step or two ahead of other people and where you can help them. And as a coach, I don't have to know how to do every single thing.
yeah,
I just have to have a little more knowledge maybe than someone else. And honestly, not even because it's really about asking questions, but there is
yeah,
that like this feeling that we have to have it all figured out before we can
yeah,
sell our services, before we can do like any of the things. Like this applies
yeah,
to so much more than creativity. Anyway, I think that's a
yeah,
beautiful full quote. And
yeah,
thank you.
yeah. Yeah, you're so welcome. Because I'm just like, okay, I can master like one or two things, but that doesn't mean I shouldn't also dabble and
Yeah.
like, learn other things. And I think people stop at the mastering and then they're just like, okay, I don't need to know anything else.
Well,
It's
and
just
we think mastery is the goal, like the
right.
only
And it's not.
acceptable goal. And it doesn't have to be. I think mastery is beautiful, right? That's great too. And it doesn't have to be the goal.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
take French for 1 year just because it's fun. And
Mm-hmm.
that's it. And that could
Yeah.
be okay. All right. I needed this conversation. I'm really going
Me
to
too.
push myself to go so soon. It'll
Me
probably be
too.
next week because of a whole host of personal things going on in our lives with this weekend and stuff.
Yeah.
There's school activities.
Yeah.
My dad's visiting. There was one of my mom's dear friends died. Like we just have so much going on. But
Oh
next
my
week,
gosh.
I think I'm going to try and sew.
Okay.
where are you at with language? Or is there another creative endeavor you'd like to take?
Well, I need to take my sourdough starter out of the fridge so I can
Okay.
get back into that because I put it in the fridge since I was traveling last week. And then I did look up like summer French classes at a local community college here. So I need to figure out the financial side of that. They're online though. I really wanted something in person.
Yeah. So maybe
Uh,
looking, you can look at continuing ed, and it's usually way less expensive than going to a
yeah.
real college. And if it's not about getting the degree or earning the
Yeah.
grade or whatever, it can be as valuable to you and much less expensive. I think sometimes there's this like thing. I know we're almost done, but I just wrote a thing about assigned reading to my newsletter saying this idea of like, I wanted to I have over and over again looked at going to get a second master's in gender and race studies. And I've done this again and again over the years. And
Yeah.
finally
I'm
I'm
trying to
like,
talk you out of it.
right. And it's like, why? Why is it that I think that it's only valid if it's through a university and I earn a degree at the end? I'm like, education, schools, valuable, and also gatekeepers. Like, it is gatekeepers to knowledge. And we live in a digital age now where there doesn't need to be gatekeeping to knowledge.
Yeah.
I can
Girl, I
create
will
my own
send you my textbook.
I can create my own degree program. And that's sort of
Yeah.
what I'm doing with assigned reading is like, I'm picking the things I would have loved to have read in a college program, and I'm reading them now, and without the grades, without that stress, and just like, can I just enjoy these? And can that be enough? And it can be. And so like, I think there's also that reminder that learning French doesn't have to be through the traditional gatekeepers of French. It can be your own, whatever you want it to be. My son is learning Spanish, sort of, by just using Google Translate and looking up words and making his own little dictionary. And it's adorable.
Oh, that's so cute.
And he's been doing it all year. And his teacher even helps him now. She'll provide him a printout once a week. He'll tell her the words he wants her to look up. And at the end of the week, she gives him the list of words. Will he ever learn Spanish really that way? Probably not. But it's, again, at 9, it's what he wants. It's a creative endeavor. And I want to remember that. Like, my learning French could look the same for me, and maybe it'll never be perfect, but who cares? Could it just be because it fulfills that thing in me? So anyway, look at continuing ed.
Yeah. I will look into continuing ed, and maybe not summer, but maybe fall.
That's fine. Yeah.
Summer's like right around the corner. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also, I don't know, not always when you want to be in a classroom when it's actually still sunny in the evening instead of dark. Your flowers are beautiful for people who can't see them. It's a lovely little arrangement. And last summer, I was picking flowers from the garden towards the end of the summer, thinking, why wasn't I doing this all year and making little arrangements?
Yeah.
I'm going to go outside right now. This is my
Go get some flowers
right now. And I'm going to pick a lovely bouquet for my next podcast recording I have this afternoon. And they will be there in that recording. So if you watch the Anna Xavier recording for assigned reading, you guys can call me out if I don't have the flowers behind me, because I'm going to go do it now.
I'll have to remember to watch that one.
So that'll be a little creative expression today.
Yeah.
Find a way to do something creative today.
Yeah. And if you're listening and you're a coach and you're interested in joining the Coaches Circle, just shoot us an email, messyliberation@gmail.com. We're more than happy to answer any questions that you have.
And schedule some if you already know you want to join, I'm going to go put it on our website, because it's not, and it should be. So I'll just go put a link on the website too. So you'll be able to find it on messyliberation.com also if you want to go and find out how to join, because it will be there by the time this is out next week.
All right. Thank you all for listening.
Thanks, Taina. Thanks for listening to Messy Liberation.
Will you please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen?
I know people say that all the time. And if you're like me, often you just go on to the next podcast. But truly, taking that moment to do that will really help us reach a wider audience.
Thank you so much for your support and for listening today.
Until next time.